Okay, welcome back. We're talking about forms of linear equations. In the last video we talked about slope-intercept form. This time we're going to talk about point-slope form. In point-slope form, like the name suggests, you know the coordinates of one point on the line, which is good, but in order to know where the line is or what direction it's going and all of that stuff, you really need to have 2 points at some point, right? So you can connect 2 points to make a line. You can only connect 2 points with one line. There's not several lines that go through. Only one line goes through 2 points. So point-slope form is useful if you know one point and you know the slope of the line. If you have those 2 pieces of information, you can make an equation for your line. Okay, so let's take the example where we know some point. Let's say that we know this point over here is 3, 1. Okay, and remember, any point in the coordinate plane can be indicated by coordinates x, y, x, y. So 3 units over to the right, 1 unit up, and we're at that point. Let's say we know our slope is -1/3. Recall that slope is m. We've said that in math we use this convention that this constant in a line, the slope doesn't change, right? It has a constant rate of change. That is its slope. And we talked about in the last video, slope is change in y over change in x. Now, we're going to expand that definition. How do we find the change in y and the change in x? Well, that's done this way. Change in y divided by change in x is found by taking the y coordinate of one point away from the y coordinate of the other. And then the change in x is also the difference between the x coordinates. So if we knew 2 points on this line, we could tell you what the slope is using this formula for the slope of that line. But we only know one of those. Okay, so if this is our slope, change in y over change in x equals our slope, then I can replace that with just m, okay? M is what we have here. That's our slope. Now, this formula, in order to use it, we would have to know 2 different points, but we only know one of them. We know 3 and 1, okay? So, we know one of these points' coordinates, x and y, but we don't know the other. So I'm going to do a little magic here. It's not really magic. I'm going to take away those subscripts, and now they're variables. Okay? The subscript just said it's some point that we know. Well, if I take away the subscript, I'm now saying, well, we don't know another point. We know that every point on that line can be given with x and y coordinates. So now this is a variable x, and this is a variable y for any point x, y on the line. That one, y sub 1, is 1, and x sub 1 is 3. That one's fixed. We know that one. So I could rewrite this equation. M equals y minus 1 over x minus 3. And then I could solve, I could rearrange this so I don't have any, I don't have a fraction anymore by multiplying, right? So if I multiply both sides of the equation by this denominator, it will cancel, and I will get y minus 1 equals m times x minus 3. That's the equation for this line. This particular line has this equation. I'll write it here. Y minus 1 equals m, but we know what m is. M is negative 1/3. So I'll write that times x minus 3. All right, here is the equation in point slope form for that particular line. Now, let's make that in general so that if we have some other slope, if we know some other point, we can come up with an equation like that without having to step through this process. All right, so what did we do here? We have the slope, so we'll just make that general. We don't know what x is, it's a variable. We don't know what this y is, it's a variable. That one is the y coordinate of this point, y sub 1. So I'll write it here, y sub 1. This 3 is the x coordinate of the point we know. The x coordinate of the point we know is x sub 1. Okay, so we have y minus y sub 1 equals the slope times the difference between the variable x and the point x1, the coordinate of the point we know, x sub 1. Okay, that's the slope, point slope form right here. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So if we know the slope, we put the slope here. If we know point coordinates, we put the y coordinate there, 1, and we put the x coordinate that we know, 3, right here. And we're done.